Ladies and gentlemen, we will now transition to our breakout sessions. Here you'll have the opportunity for more in-depth discussions and engagement. We encourage you to participate actively and make the most out of these conversations. The first breakout session will be gear and apparel feedback to industry, and the second will be how to make change in a bureaucracy.
Is it working? Yeah, okay.
It works.
It's me and you. I love that.
And we're bringing Mystery Ranch down.
Okay.
Can you go ahead and introduce yourself and explain what your company does?
Hi, everyone. My name is Mitch Gilbert. I'm the CEO of Oya Femtech Apparel. Oya is a Nigerian warrior goddess who represents rebirth in storms, and we thought that that was a great name for a company that focuses on creating apparel for women who sweat. So we focus on optimizing for all the issues that take sweaty people out, like yeast infections, BV, UTIs. I can't really see your faces, but I hope I'm getting some head nods because I'm sure that's like a common occurrence. And we have patented bottoms that are 4 times more absorbent, 2 times more breathable than competitors. We have sports bras that are optimized for breathability, anti-chafing, all of that fun stuff. And we are available in regular fabrics as well as flame-resistant fabrics. We're free of toxins like BPAs and PFAs, so anti-cancer. That's important. And I'm excited to be here and learn from you all today.
Thank you. Molly Beth.
Those lights are really something. I give a lot of credit to everyone who's been up here. My name is Molly Beth Hendricks. I'm the product manager for the military and fire lines of Mystery Ranch, based out of Bozeman, Montana. And this is my first Military Women's Symposium. I'm so happy to be here, and I am just so hungry to understand more on the human factors, anthropometric kind of side of the house, because again, and I think it's been articulated in a few different ways, but there is a disconnect. You know, I can only do so much being out of my little warehouse in Bozeman, Montana, with my 3 grumpy Billy Goat designers who I love down to my core. I mean, these guys care. They care so much more than you think on making human-centric design, but oftentimes, you know, we're shooting in the dark. So I don't quite know why I'm up here. I'm honored to be up here, but please, you know, I am here to listen. I'm the only female on my team currently, and I care too. So I have boobs, so.
We had this conversation yesterday. It's something that everyone, no matter their gender, can get behind. Boobs bring everyone together. All right, so we could pretty much stay up here all day and just chat about the industry, but I wanted to have this opportunity to allow you all to ask these women questions, us questions, ask me as well, anything that you need to know. We want to have a bridge between industry and end user. It is very hard for us being in the industry to understand your current needs, especially considering sometimes you all can't tell us where you're going or what you're doing. So if you all could, if you have questions, let us know. If there's a need that you have, like I've already said, we need female base layer, cold weather base layer
Very
gear.
explicitly.
Very explicitly. I know that that's a gap. So if there are other gaps out there, please let us know.
Go ahead and, do we got a question? I got one. I don't know if y'all will be able to answer this, but this is kind of a carryover from the last panel, but one of the things, so just for the room, Catherine already knows this, but I work in Office of Women's Policy for the Navy also, so live and breathe these problems all the time, and there's plenty of challenges that Catherine and I have lamented over when it comes to getting this stuff in the services. But one of the frustrations that I find often is that we love studies in the DoD, so it's like, oh, there's this problem. Oh, we need a study, and studies take 5 years, whatever. Then you have the service cultures that come into it. Air Force does a BCA study, and Marines are like, but we're the Marines, we need our own BCA study. And then they do a BCA study, and then the Navy does one, and then the Army does one, and then nothing changes. So I guess I'm kind of wondering, like, with the Air Force policy that one of the last panelists mentioned about changing the 90th percent of the recruiting population, I'm wondering, like, are we talking about 18 to 22-year-olds? Are we talking about middle, like 22 to 35? Are we talking like 18 all the way up to 49? Because there's a lot of changes in those demographics. And then are we also taking into account different ethnicities and diversity? And I know that's like a dirty word now, but African American sizes versus Hispanic versus traditionally white, those can vary also. So I guess how do we tackle that very large problem, and like what is the aim of that, and how many more studies do we need to do before we like buy the thing? Thank you.
Yeah, I wish everyone could just buy the thing because that'd be very helpful for all of us up here. I think one of the struggles that we have is, I'm sure you all have heard, we can make statistics say anything that we want them to say, right? A lot of it is up to interpretation. And when you have vague requirements written in a way where vendors in the industry can interpret it the way that it best suits them, we run into problems. Even that RFI that I shared before, right? Dakowitz was doing the right thing. And it was technically answered. And then it was forgotten. So when we have the requirements of, 90th percentage, 95th percentile, even as we all experience that 5'5", everyone under 5'5" had a problem because vendors were interpreting it that as the 5th percentile of men. So what it really comes down to is unless there is a very, very, very well-written requirement, it's going to be up to the vendor to interpret it. And if the vendor, and this is a discussion I have a lot, they have to be willing to do the right thing. And sometimes they just won't. And there's nothing that anyone can do about that. Now, when that product is provided and then it sucks, then we go back into the cycle. And then the next leadership, who changes out every 2 years, says, okay, well, let's try this again. And then it goes on and on and on. And then that's why we used to have IG, right? We used to say, hey, we paid X amount of money for this. It didn't work out. It's fraud, waste, and abuse. I don't know how the IGs are handling things right now.
I think they all got fired.
So it's problematic. But I guess my point is that I would encourage the ladies here today and any vendors who are listening, like, they need to do the right thing. This is the end user's job is life and death. And so I hope that they step up to that.
Thanks.
So, related question. I mean, in human use factors design, a lot of the seminal work on the anthropometric data that are used today, it was done maybe half a century ago. A lot of it was done by the United States Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine and others, right? Thousands and thousands of people, and again, probably all men, right? But they were able to catalog, vast amounts of information, detail about the anatomy of the hand and right, the variation in the anatomy of the hand and the body and everything else, right? And then that goes into the design of everything. Do those kinds of data sets exist, to your knowledge, or do you use them for women? Or, as the last panel was discussing, are we just kind of taking the data from men and saying, well, a woman's X percent of a man, and therefore that's the design that we're going to use? Like, what data is what exists and what's being used right now?
Speaking on behalf of privately owned femtech startups, that's what we are called, feminine technology and that whole ecosphere. One of the biggest issues with femtech startups is that I can't speak to all of the data sources that they spoke about in the last panel, and that's amazing, and we're going to reach out to get more resources. But a lot of femtech startups are tasked with building their own data resources. They're creating their own research labs. They're putting their own money into like running these studies and getting this data to help them evolve, like whether that be their product fit or even learning specific, like we do a lot of work with like the vaginal microbiome, and like that just doesn't exist. And so you have to raise money in order to run these studies. And I think that that's an additional barrier to entry because women-led startups struggle with raising money in general. So now you're saying I have to put so much of this money into research before I even have a product that I can sell it. And so you also see a lot of women-owned startups because of that reason. They struggle to get from pre-seed, which is like before they launch, to like seed, which is actually getting a product to market, because sometimes getting access to that data is really expensive and time-consuming.
And on that, I mean, most of that data is held within corporations that we would pay for. So it's either we create it ourselves or we pay for someone else to do it. And depending on budgetary issues, it just depends. The militaries have done body scans. They've updated that, I think, every single service. But it's not broken down to male, female in that way. And additionally, as we discussed in the last one, it's not, in my opinion, for women, it needs to be broken down weekly. It was probably 10-ish years ago that some of the body armor companies were doing custom body scan body armor for like our JSOC operators. And they found that it didn't fit women 40% of the time. And it's like, all right, well, which week did you scan them? Because it's going to change. And that whole concept was just deemed too complex to continue. So there should be, and I hope there's a lot more data sharing going on to help younger companies, or you have to build that relationship with those corporations that already have the data.
Whew, toughie. I can speak from the perspective, and I'm totally going to butcher the name of the study that I have closely looked at. I believe it's the Daisy might know, but the 2012 anthropometric study performed by the USMC. That has been a bread and butter piece of, information that I have looked at, and it's got everything. It's got like the depth of your eyeball, basically. It's really truly just the work that's put into that is extraordinary. Speaking for myself and my team and how that data is interpreted and used appropriately, unfortunately, an uphill battle that I have experienced is the procurement side of things. You have essentially, from what I can tell, a pretty, non-in-depth procurement kind of experience, I guess, coming from the military. You might have, specs on your people, and then you're kind of picking and sizing. I need 50 smalls, I need 100 mediums, and I need 35 larges or extra larges. And you're kind of just looking at it from this very plain perspective. So in my assumption, or in what I was guided with as my assumption in terms of how to design with that in mind, a big part of, my journey was how do I make it palatable for someone who's procuring my goods? And a big, way that we did that, whether it's right or wrong, and that is a bit of the harsh reality, and just sitting here today and, really taking in the fact that the male and female form are so different, and you can't lump sum them, and you can't average them appropriately. A big thing that, we looked at was just our system, the backpack, the harnessing and waist belt, and how that communicates with body armor. Today, and again, there's not a lot of, female form body armor incorporated, as I, am coming to understand, is that you become this homogeneous blob. You become a square box. And so as someone who's making the packs that sit on this square blob, I have almost extracted, gender out of that equation, just knowing that my system doesn't communicate with a male or female form. It communicates with a square, a big block on this body. So, and I've probably gotten away from your question, I do apologize, but in terms of interpreting the data, as best as I can as an industry partner, really that 2nd to 98th guidance and just hitting that smallest individual, that smallest standard, and now knowing that the fifth percentile between men and women is not the same. So when we lump sum it and say, the fifth percentile for men, I think you had said was 5.555, and then for women it's around 5. I think you almost play this game of extremes. You just see how far you can get down. How small can you make a small? So again, I'm pretty green here and I feel a little bit over my skis. But what I would say, and I feel is a bit of a harsh reality as an industry partner, and also, having a business to, try and make sales, a lot of the work that I done hasn't been honing in on gender specifically at this point. It's been working with the other components of the system. And so right now the systems that are at play are big square boxes, body armor, current body armor, and how do we make it so it's not sloshing off the shoulders? And how is it communicating with that system rather than communicating with that individual? And that is a current hurdle, and especially after, these past 2 days, like, it's a glaring miss, honestly, from an industry perspective. But I would say communicating with other objects rather than with people is currently something at play as well, especially on the procurement side. That was long-winded.
Hi, it's Sierra. Sorry if this gets a little TMI, but this is my main concern with clothing in the military. So a little background for my question. I frequently work on a range where we are in the middle of the desert, hours and hours into the middle of the desert. And at times there's nothing but desert. So there's not a bush to get behind, nothing like that. And so the concern becomes using the bathroom while you're in the middle of this range. There are no bathrooms, there are no bushes sometimes, and it's flat for miles and miles. So squatting to pee is not really comfortable. Because typically I'm the only woman out there with a group of maybe 10 or so guys. So it can be a little weird. So I'm always like, okay, everyone just turn around. But so I have been provided a shiwi. If anyone doesn't know what a shiwi is essentially a funnel that allows a woman to pee standing up. So you are a little bit more protected. However, there's still at times I have a whole entire kit in order to just pee, where it's like I take a jacket, tie it around my waist so I can pull my pants down enough to allow the shiwi to get where it needs to be in order to urinate without just getting it all over myself, which unfortunately doesn't always work. And so oftentimes I've thought what would be great would be a pair of pants and underwear that would have some sort of mechanism of opening up without actually having to pull them all the way down, similar to how a guy can just unzip and then use the bathroom without actually having to pull his pants down, because you still have to use a shiwi, you still got to pull them down a little bit, not as much to squat, but still a little bit, so you're still a little bit exposed and a little bit uncomfortable. So I've often thought, man, I wish there was a pair of pants out there that would quite literally zip all the way, and underwear, if they could Velcro open all the way down. So I guess my question is, because I've looked around, not really seen that. Maybe I'm not looking in the right places. Does that exist? Do you think that's something you could work towards making?
It does exist. It's called NARA. GNARA, right? She's been trying to license that to military for, I think, the last couple years with little success. But yeah, she has a whole line out. Recommend you take a look. I am with you. I actually live in the desert, and I've been out there with a bunch of dudes. And my poor husband has to explain why I'm standing up while I'm peeing next to them. But I know that we have a lot of female urination devices out there. I personally prefer the Freshette. It has a longer nozzle and a super hard funnel. And that way I don't have to pull my pants all the way down to do it. So there are a few options out there. And again, especially when folks are running around with packs on, and that pack's 50, 60 pounds, they do not, or higher, they don't want to take it off in order to pee. So squatting isn't really a great option. So try that. Try different female urination device. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, and I know you felt uncomfortable asking that question, but one, want to thank you for your service, but then also, two, your bravery, because that may seem like an uncomfortable question for you, but other people have that question. And, like, you don't get options that help you work better until, like, you ask that question. And so thank you for sharing that resource. And I also know some brands that I can share with you afterwards. You're welcome.
That's also a pretty common problem, so don't be ashamed of that.
Definitely.
So my question, twofold. I'm over here. Hi, Sam. The current environment, right? Many of your products are female specific. The terms male and female right now are very politicized. I also note fabulous 2 women-owned businesses, which I think is fantastic. But with the current environment within the Department of Defense and the scrutiny that we're seeing and kind of dismantling of a lot of policies that we had that were in place to provide female-specific gear and equipment, along with supporting women and other minority businesses, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts, concerns on what the future might look like for you and your business. And then second question is, how can we help you? I spend a lot of time, and how I met Mitch was at a conference, and we connected over the policy work that I do and getting her plugged into the people she needed to talk to so they knew that her product existed to get it to the end user. So I offer that as a more positive second question of, how can we as people internal to the department and the end user help get you guys connected to who you need to be connected to?
I can go first. So thank you, Sam. I appreciate you, consider you as a friend and an advisor. So I'll take that one step at a time. So the first question is, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this because I'm team vaginas. I'm really, that's my thing. I really want to support women in being the best that they can be and help them mitigate and avoid and fight feminine health issues that often take them out. And that's a part of my personal ethos. But in this current environment with so much going on, I've been advised by some of like my marine advisors and doing like lobbying to take out that language and focus instead on like increased lethality or increased mission readiness, because there's still budget for that, right? It just may have different language. And so I've intentionally been working on my capability statement, getting all my data organized, working on my white papers, and then trying to network and meet people with where they're at. So thank you everyone who stopped by our booth and came and talked to us. That's been my personal strategy. I'm sure you can share more to that. And then as far as the second part of your question, I think it's that networking piece. It's making time to talk to people. So it's like if you have GSA budget, or sorry, if you have if you're ordering products for your women, or if you're thinking, oh, maybe I have some women on my team and I never even thought about this is like a solution that could like work for them. We're on GSA, and so I'd love to have a conversation with you about like how to get those products ordered. But I think it's just being open to having those conversations. And if you're at a conference like this, then more than likely you're already 10 steps ahead of everybody else. So I think it's just continuing on that track.
For us, it's really about operationalizing everything. And as you all remember from my brief, I'm a little passionate about ensuring everyone knows this is about combat effectiveness. So does that mean that we alter talking points a little bit? Yes. But the heart of the matter is still you and we have women in the service. We have women in combat arms. We have women as special operators. And in order for them to be combat effective, they have to have the gear that fits their bodies. There's nothing diversity, equity, inclusion in that. That is simply lethality and survivability too. So, I mean, do we talk all day about research? And yes, a little too much in my mind. I'm a doer. I don't want another study on another study that tells me the exact same thing. And I know that well-behaved women seldom make history. But what we need to start focusing on is less of us versus them and more of we are already at the table, so let's make sure that we're optimized in order to defeat the enemy. In terms of what we need help with is explaining just that. We need our male leaders, our male peers to be our allies for that, to say, yeah, she and I were on the same ruck march and she had the exact same kid as I did, and she stayed up with me, but it sure as hell looked painful. Can we do something about that? She can't swing her arms when she runs because she's holding her kid down. So that is definitely one side of it. We need that support and those allies. Secondly, we really need a change, and whether this is in legislative policy, but every single time the government contracts with a vendor, they need to be required to create female fit and female specific. If that is a requirement, then we're good, right? Like, it makes sense. I don't have to keep fighting for it. I don't have to keep explaining to people why it's important. Because women will have female fit, female specific. They can be combat effective. We can destroy all of our enemies, and then we can go home and eat chocolate. So, for us, we appreciate it, but we still need that advocacy on the policy side and the requirement side.
Just one tiny note on top of that. I would say specificity around, those requirements is really helpful from like a product development standpoint. Having an understanding of not just to fit the female form, but like what are the intricacies behind those definitions can really move the needle on how fast a product is getting, generated and turned around. So I would say in terms of help and guidance is not just giving us the blanket statement of like, we need it to fit our ladies. Like, I want to know how does it need to fit them? What is the main concerns? And that detail is really what I would, as I mentioned, it moves the needle. It gets us going. 'Cause there is no lack of, desire to want to meet and exceed those conditions. A lot of times I don't know what the specifics of those conditions are to generate a product. So that's the additional layer to that, I'd say.
I think we got time for one more.
So, real quick, first of all, shout out to Mystery Ranch because they have made the best aid bag that I've ever used in 17 years. Woo woo. However, what I would love is a ruck that can fit all of my gear. It has a small enough torso to fit on my human-sized body, and didn't ride down on the top of my butt the whole time. So that way it's actually sitting right, which will help with hips. The other piece is, man, I want some boots. I want some boots that will keep my feet warm in the winter that are sized for women. So I'm not ordering some size 6 XXX wide that shows up and it turns out it's still too narrow and it's 5 sizes too large. So just, that would be great.
Boots are the bane of my existence, so I hear you on that one.
In terms of torso length, completely hear you there. And again, I did my best to kind of articulate the past point that I was kind of long-winded trying to make, but unfortunately, we are held to kind of making the money, as a business. And so sometimes, at least in my experience, and again, coming in, a lot of the focus hasn't been on gender. It's just making it fit, hitting the standard. Currently, the work that's being done, again, when I have a pretty standard like the 2nd to 98th percentile, and I have some information around that, like I'm pedal to the metal, like trying to make that happen. Currently, we've reworked our sizing. So rather than offering an extra small to an extra large, we actually shrunk it. We shrunk it in terms of size optimization. We didn't shrink the sizes the breadth of measurement that we offer, but we tried to have a partnership in terms of how easily those items are procured. And so where we've taken 5 sizes, extra small to extra large, we've consolidated it down to 3, so small, medium, and large. while doing that, we took a look at the harnessing, which I would say most of the time the torso length is primarily the issue that we run into with women, especially in getting down to that second percentile. So we stretched, like we stretched the harness's ability to accommodate that shorter torso length, excuse me. So where we were covering a 16-inch torso length, the new standard of the 2nd to 98th, and again, it's all attached. Like that's how important, having the specific standard that we need to hit and that we are held accountable to hit is so important. So now where the standard was 16 inches of torso length, we expanded it down to 14. So now we're getting down to those smallest individuals, or as closely as we can to hit those smaller individuals, while not sacrificing the breadth of measurement that we cover. So it's coming, sister. I'm working on it. But again, that visibility to those issues is really where we can get your help and your partnership. We don't know what we don't know. We say that all the time at the ranch, and a lot of it is optics, just what aren't we encountering? And unfortunately, the loudest voices of the military, with it being such a high percentage of men, are the men. They're telling us the problems. So again, like, come to me, grab my card, find me on LinkedIn, shoot me a message, visit Bozeman. I need people to test this stuff. And I have a plethora of young men who are so ready to, go ruck until their feet bleed with my packs, but I don't have women to do that. And I don't have that testing data. And I'd say, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I'm probably going over time. But in terms of like from a data perspective and internally, I'd say a lot of what we do is kind of this voodoo magic of just trying to find the right mix in the products that we're offering and trying to find the right measurement and how comfortable it is. It's not a perfect science, and we can work with data, but a lot of times, this is a lean team. It's very startup-like. So we're just trying to make changes happen and trying to make products and generate them, but we don't have the perfect, data set to work with. And so sometimes those real-time individuals, that real-time feedback, how it's fitting, it weighs more importantly than sometimes like a number can offer. We can get like the actual feedback in real time from an individual telling us this really sucked to wear, or this was wonderfully comfortable and changed my life. So again, I would encourage you, like, be loud. If you need it, shout it, find me. And again, that's what moves the needle in my mind.
I would also add, that's why it's so important that companies have female designers, especially female designers in leadership. You often see that in a lack of companies. Like I worked at Lululemon, and women would all the time get like rashes from their clothes because they have like lots of toxins in them. And I was talking to the CMO, and she was like, yeah, I can't even wear these clothes. And I'm like, how do you market clothes that you can't wear, ma'am? That's like not great. Like, I was like, I don't know how that's legal, but okay. And I was like, don't you talk to product? And product, of course, head of product was a guy. And he said, I'm focused on technology like thumb holes, which is great because thumb holes are fantastic. I don't think that meant, though, that they were always pushing their products in a way that could help women as best as they could. So to her point, your point, continuing to be loud and talk to people and find female designers at these companies and promoting your friends and pushing them up and helping women get into more leadership roles. I'm not sure how that's going to work out in today's environment, to your point, Sam, but like if we want better products, women have to get into bigger roles.
I have another just plug. And
Very
again,
quick, very quick.
Very quick. I was so fortunate to grab dinner with Catherine last night. And, I was not in the military. I'm fortunate enough to have two brothers that were. So I feel very close, and I feel a very, strong tie to want to make stuff suck less. But what I would say, and I think it's, at least I can hear it a little bit in the room, is this conversation around diversity and inclusion and whatnot. And I would say, rather than making it, or at least from what I can tell, sometimes we villainize that rather than boasting the fact that being a woman is the superpower. It is. So I would just say, like, you know, how do we kind of reframe or change the perspective of what is kind of being, you know, dirtied as a word and an ideology, and rather make it something that's lifted and boasted and strengthened as, like, this is what makes you different. This, you are an individual, you are very specific, and you have a certain skill set that no man does. And the way you approach problems and think and do and act is different. There's a need for both men and women at both sides of the table. So that's my parting thought on that. And it's just been so awesome to be here. And I had no idea I was coming up here.
Yeah, that's my bad. But thank you all. They'll still be around if you guys have more specific questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, our next breakout session is